Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. I'm Ray Rossini, and this is Partner First. Subject matter, thought experts, vendors of note, people you generally want to know in the MSP space. And today is absolutely no different. Just going over a little bit of housekeeping. Thank you very much, Brandon. Just going over a little bit of housekeeping. This is recorded as always. This is not death by presentation. This is absolutely going to be conversational. So if you're in the chat, let us know. Today, something very near and dear to my heart because I'm all about process, procedure, and automation, and these people actually make that happen. So do me a favor and help me welcome the chicken people, Mr. Aaron Chernin and Tim Fournette. How you doing, gentlemen?
Hey,
Doing
pretty good.
great.
Cool. So for those of us, for those that don't know you guys, Aaron, we'll start with you. Can you give a little bit of your background before Rewst and what you guys do today?
Uh, Definitely. So prior to Rewst, I was the founder and CEO of Perch Security. And prior to that, I worked in the financial services industry for banks doing cybersecurity. And it seems like a weird jump going from cybersecurity to automation. Uh, but I had an interesting security career. Before I started Perch, I was leading a team of developers that were automating manual tasks at financial services companies. Security automation is what we called the team. And I used to joke that we would attempt to automate all the things that the regulators want us to do so that we could actually spend time securing the bank.
And that's the trick, right? It's all about the automation. Tim, you live the MSP life. With automation, you know how important it is. But let's give a little bit of background of you and what you're doing pre-Roost and what you do now.
Yeah, so I've done a little bit of everything in IT, I would say. Prior to being at Roost, I was at an MSP for about 16 years. And the whole time there, I didn't like to do work, so I wanted to automate it. So I figured if I was going to do something more than once, then I'd rather spend that time building the automation so I don't have to do it more than once.
That's the trick, right? Spend an hour or two so you don't have to do 5 minutes of work over and over and over again. Lord knows I've had plenty of nights 2 and 3 a.m. with PowerShell and Code Red getting stuff knocked out. But it's definitely awesome, and that's gotten a little easier over the years, right? We've had there's a word for this, right? Like in the MSP world, we've always called it automation, but outside the MSP world in the enterprise space, RPA has been a thing for a long time, right? Like it's weird to hear that MSPs are just catching up to this. That Aaron, can you tell us a little, what does RPA stand for and what does it mean?
Uh, I'm not a big fan of the acronym myself, but I need a bucket to put our company into. It stands for Robotic Process Automation. The only part I would really focus on is the process part. And RPA has been around for quite a while. We were using it more than 7 years ago in the security space, successfully in the enterprise. 7 years later, there's very little adoption in the MSP space, and so we're trying to solve that. And there's a number of reasons why we believe RPA has been lightly adopted thus far down market. And what's interesting is it's very similar to what I experienced in the SIM space, trying to get that out of the Fortune 500 companies. And that's the lack of resources or manpower to actually automate. If you have to hire a whole bunch of people or redivert a whole bunch of people in your company to use an RPA tool to automate, you've now just hurt the whole value proposition of automation because you spent more money than you could potentially even save. And then the second
that's the weird part, right? Like, so SOCSIM, I understand it. That took a while to get from enterprise to MSP because prior to Perch and some of the other tools out there, it was a really expensive endeavor. Having your own 24/7 SOC or outsourcing a 24/7 SOC was expensive. Having a SIM was expensive, right? Tons of data and correlating the data and acting on it and knowing what's important, what's not. Automation, though, has been around for a long, long time. Now, I've never heard an MSP prior to this conversation talk about it as RPA, but whether it was Zapier, 8n8, Trey, Workato, you name it, Power Automate even, like there's tools out there. I mean, there's the cyber drain scripts, Kelvin has out there that we all take advantage of. I mean, automating your tools is out there. Platforms for the automation of your stuff has been out there for a long time. It's just, I don't think MSPs have ever said, this is a skill set, this is a tool we need to have in our stack to do things. It was always if I get time, I'm going to automate it, when we get time, right? Like, was that kind of how it went at your MSP, Tim, like before entering this life?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The tools were all over the place. So, PowerShell, great tool, but how do you keep tabs on where your scripts are? How do you get them to run? Who runs them? Who maintains them? So those were the challenges that we had. No, it's definitely way better than no automation. But
yeah, there we go. We have Dallin in the chat saying he's never heard the term RPA before, and he's a voice provider like me. So he's like, you know what I mean? And I definitely didn't know it as RPA back in the day. There's other tools out there, right? There's other I'm going to call them automation because Rewst was the first one to come out and say we're an RPA platform for MSPs. So to my knowledge, and I'm pretty sure that's accurate because I kind of watch everybody, but there's tons of other automation platforms out there, but there's tons of everything out there. What makes Rewst we're not trying to be salesy. You guys have thought of this value proposition when coming up with the company. Why something like Rewst that's dedicated to MSPs versus like a Zapier or any of the other automation or even Power Automate that's included with a lot of our tools?
First off, I'll take a step back. I think MSPs are automating today even before Rewst was around. You folks are writing PowerShell scripts, executing them from your RMMs, and automating things. I believe that's more like a task automation though. And really it's a mindset of trying to figure out, hey, I want to just automate this one task versus I want to automate an entire process, which is what makes up a process, but multiple tasks. And so that's number one. And then really, I think our differentiator is Tim's team, the ROC, or Robotic Operations Center. And so the ROC is included in every subscription, and that helps your business case to save money through automation by not having to hire additional automation folks or take someone who's already busy and divert them to using Rewst. And then the other thing that's a differentiator is products like Zapier and other enterprise RPAs are focused on integrating with the products that those companies use. They're not focused on integrating with every RMM and PSA out there and the tools that MSPs like to use. We have a number,
right? Like the MSPs, we have our ecosystem. We're not, yes, there's tools out there that'll work with Splunk and work with Kubernetes and work with all this other stuff. But in the MSP world, we live by PSA, RMM, documentation platform, 365. Like we have our very tight, and it seems like there's no end to MSP tools out there, of course, but like it is a very niche, we have our ecosystem. So when you start looking at like a lot of these platforms, they don't integrate with these things, with the things that are commonplace to us, or they have very lackluster integrations, which is frustrating. Or, even like when you're running PowerShell out of RMM, like you've been talking about, yes, we all do it. But like, at least in my case, my thing was always, if we need to do something repeatedly or we need to do something in mass, those were criteria to start building out a Python or a PowerShell script to get it done. But then it was, how are you triggering this, right? Like it was usually RMM alerting off something and then running it, or you're prompting, you got something from a ticket that you needed to do it. It was manual automation. It wasn't automated automation. You know what I mean? And I think you guys have kind of solved that with your platform a little bit.
Hey, I want to pop in and say, Adam Wilford from Iraq, I just saw him pop up in chat. He is definitely one of our rock stars. And Adam, get better. He's been crazy sick the past few days. With that, Power Automate, I urge folks to try it. Our best users are people that that use Power Automate because they know the challenge of trying to use these tools that weren't built for MSPs, like trying to integrate Power Automate to your PSA. You have to basically build the HTTP calls yourself, wherein a product like Rewst, we've already built the integration. We've got all the actions the integration can do built for you. You don't have to figure out how to use their API.
And that's one of the things, like when I first looked at this, I think I first logged in like right after Rob, Write a Boom, or ITNet. I forgot when. But like one of the things I loved about it was like Tim had talked to me about the crates, right? Because the problem with a lot of these automations, and it's weird because from a I consider myself a process-driven engineer. All automation is pretty simple because you start out with workshopping, diagramming what it's going to do, how it's going to flow. Then you create a document of the process if you were doing it manually, and that becomes the basis for the automations you create. And then, seeing where you can consolidate whatever. But for a lot of people, I know when they look at a Power Automate, and that's misery. I've tried, and Power Automate throws me for a loop. But when I do a lot of this stuff, like I've heard from a lot of people, they see it as a blank canvas, and they know what they have ideas of what they want to do, but it's like they can do so many things they're lost. And that's why I kind of like the crates, because the crates are already saying, yeah, I'll create a PSA ticket from a Rewst form, or have your ConnectWise manage agreement mapping. Those things that are already there, hey, these are the ideas you can start doing, make life so much easier. And then you pair that with the rock stars who, hey, let's get you from beginning to end and make it happen. That's pretty awesome. So with these crates, Tim, can you tell us, like, where did these ideas come out of? Are these user requests? Are these you thinking best practices, things you wish you had at your MSP? Where'd the crates come from?
Yeah, so it definitely started off with things that I wish I had, the things that I had kind of in my backlog of stuff to do, and just no good tools to do it with. But we got a lot of demand for certain things from clients, and so we listened to the things they ask for, and some of these things are something that maybe doesn't map to everybody, but is super useful for them, maybe to get them through a client project or run some process that they only use. But a lot of ideas come from MSPs who are just showing us what hurts. And when they do that and we build something that everybody can use, we put it on the marketplace and get the use out of it.
So something I want to bring up real quick, Dallin saying Adam needs a better antivirus. Those of you who have never met Aaron in person before, he is one of the punniest dudes you will ever meet in your entire life. This is, I forgot if it was Rob or where it was, but you guys were giving out chicken rub. And it took me a minute because, like, I knew who you guys were, obviously, and I knew about Rewst from friends, and I was talking, but like, it didn't dawn on me why you were giving out chicken rub, and your icon is a chicken. It's Rewst, REWST, and it's like so I take it home, and my wife's asking me about it, and forever since, every time we talk about Rewst, she will not call you Rewst. She will call you the chicken people. And Aaron was going off on puns before we went live. So if you have good chicken puns, I want to hear it. Maybe we'll give away some free shirts or swag. Simon will tag you. But we want to hear your chicken puns and see if we can get any Aaron hasn't heard before.
Go ahead and cluck the like and subscribe button.
Oh, I might get tarred and feathered after this. So, and we have Connor Swam already bringing up Skyline. So we can go off track for a second here. between Hick Hop and Skyline. Can you give me the Skyline background? Like what is this?
Where do I begin? I mean, the amount of sheer flavor has almost got me confused. When very early in my career, this is going to date me, maybe like 25 plus years ago. I had an IT job right next to a Skyline Chili, and I ate there every day, and I got an addiction. There could be some sort of addictive additive to it. And I've carried that addiction. We're based out of Tampa, Florida, and there is actually a Skyline, if you know what it is, relatively nearby. And so I attend it about once a month, and I started taking my team there. And much to my dismay, a number of them didn't like it. I'm super surprised why someone wouldn't like it. And then it became kind of a hazing ritual for new employees to eat a bowl of Skyline.
From what I've heard from Slagle and others, it is a very divisive thing. It is either you love it or you hate it. I haven't heard anyone in the middle. Like, it's okay. You know what I mean? It's kind of a little like Shake Shack. Like there's detractors and pros. You never find anybody that's like, we can go hang out there. So of course, Ashley Cooper, not a bot, Ashley Cooper, comes out swinging. Aaron or Tim, do you know the answer to this one? What's a chicken's favorite subject to study?
I don't.
No.
What is it?
Ooh, Ashley keeps winning. Ashley has so much swag. Your taste and humor is impeccable. Ashley, okay, you got to give us the answer to that question. So while we do that, let's get to an actual question. So Rewst helps unscramble manual processes. Would you say that's fair, guys?
Yeah, I mean, the key word there is processes, right? And we used to, this comes back to my enterprise days working in an automation team. I always start every one of these challenges with the statement, you can't automate a process that doesn't exist. So keep that in mind.
All right. So ergonomics, Simon. I think we owe Ashley some swag. I mean, that's a good one. Yeah.
Unscramble.
Oh, good Lord. So I see questions here. So you guys have a handful of integrations. You're still building integrations like at a ridiculous pace. I do see a question from Sage. When are you guys going to integrate with Synchro?
It is on our list. We focused on the mass market. We're trying to get to at least 60 to 70% of the MSPs out there immediately. And now we're working on the long tail of PSAs and RMMs out there to collect the rest. Please bear with us. We are releasing about 4 new integrations a month.
Good Lord, that is nuts. But I mean, I guess that's par for the course when you're the automation platform. It's only as good as I can't say it's only as good as the integrations because you can build your own.
Yeah,
right? Like you could if you wanted to.
We have, and by the way, we're not going to pick a PSA and RMM winner, right? In a perfect world, we'll integrate with them all. And then, yes, if the API is HTTP driven, we do have an HTTP action inside the platform that will allow you to build an integration, just like Power Automate requires you to build integrations. The only reason why we build them is just to make your life easier, not that it's impossible to integrate with those other products.
Yeah, but that's the point of the platform, right? Like a good tool is going to make your life easier. It's nothing you couldn't do by yourself. I could absolutely use my drill as a hammer, and I have repeatedly. But if you have a tool that's special built for it, maybe it's a better place. Any chicken studying ergonomics is sure to ace all their examinations. Wow, these are impressive. Yeah. Okay. So let's take a step back. One of the questions, it feels weird to have to ask this, but I'm going to ask the question first, and then I'll say why it feels weird. The question is, why is automation so important to consider for MSPs right now? And before the people in the chat, which are highly intelligent, many partners of mine, many friends of mine, before you go, remember, there's going to be thousands of people watching this after the fact. Because for every person that says MSP automation is important in MSP, you also have the business owners in the tech saying, I never have time for automation. So it's either important and you make time for it, or it's not important and you can afford not to make time for it. So that's why I struggle with this question. But the question at hand, why is automation important for MSPs, especially now?
First off, we're in a down economy, and do we want to be hiring more staff? Like, let's take our existing staff and we're going to help grow our businesses by taking the menial, easy, low-hanging fruit things that are probably boring your people today to do. And we're going to hand that off to machines to go do. And your existing staff can focus on hard things to do, things that are probably more challenging and interesting to them. And that could help you delay hiring. And then also with inflation, it's more expensive and more difficult to find new staff, even if you wanted to. Next is, I believe as more and more MSPs start to automate, it's going to become a competitive advantage for MSPs, where, for example, requesting, having one of your clients requesting adding of a new user could take one MSP several hours and another MSP several minutes. I think that is a great value add that MSPs could go to market with, amongst other automations as well.
And that's the down market's a big deal. You know, I there's two sides of it. One, you know, you're trying to do more with less. We've been doing that since late 2000, 2009, 2010 and up. But, even more so this, going into the oncoming recession, which most analysts agree is going to happen, doing more with less is a great thing to do. And there's your automation, all that, because you also have good staff are becoming really hard to find. Besides that, their salaries are astronomical. They're also very difficult because it's a very aggressive market. But then I look at it from the opposite. I look at it from the human's perspective. I always want my touches with my clients to be meaningful touches. I don't want it to be loading them into certain platforms, getting them onboarded, getting them user accounts or resetting passwords, or, I don't want my staff to waste their time, updating agreements and putting it across 4 different platforms. That's a waste of my staff's time. I want them to do the intelligent, meaningful, creative things I hire these smart human beings to do. And my interactions with my clients, with my partners, I want it to be equally meaningful. That can't happen if you're sitting there doing the mundane day in and day out. As a business owner, that's how I approach this automation. I want to stop wasting time and possibly make mistakes, right? The swivel chairing, the double entry, mistakes happen from there. In the chat, and the chat's going absolutely buck wild right now. In the chat, or I should say cluck wild. In the chat, if there's anything you guys are automating today that you think is interesting, let me know. I want to know if there's like any automations you're especially proud of, that kind of thing. Do not go to cyberdrain.com and just start like rattling off his scripts, because I take credit for every single one of them. But Tim, what has there been any stuff that like people have brought up to the rock and be like, I want to automate this? You're like, oh wow, I've never thought of that.
We get really interesting things very often. Most of what we see are just those time-saving things. So a lot of ticket triage type requests where people are getting alerts from tools and wanting to kind of close the loop on that without user interaction. So, when you get a dark web alert or a phishing email, just being able to categorize and close those tickets out when they're not important is something that saved people a lot of time. We've had some really cool ideas. Some people automating things for their clients. One that was really out there and I think really awesome was for an MSP's clients. We helped them build an automation that takes service alerts from heavy equipment in the field. So think backhoes and combines, and routes those service alerts to the customer's closest location by drive time.
That's pretty dope. I love that Ashley Cooper comes out with the real, because she's always the one that like brings in the thought-provoking human element questions, which is why I love talking to her. She says, your time is too important. See, when I highlight it, I can't read it. Your time is too important to do to the things a computer can't do. To spend time doing things automation can do for you just means you're not tracking the cost of your human effort. And then she follows with, think of what else the person could be doing instead. And of course, Adam has to ask, please don't write anything without puns. Ashley, to not be outdone, comes back and gives us proper puns. How long do people spend working on silly things around the clock? So thank you for that, Miss Cooper. I appreciate you. You are awesome. So actually, speaking of silly things, though, I don't know how we can do it to like not call out any partners, even though our partners are all friends anyway. But has there been anything that like they've asked for of the Rock, or like they brought up and been like, yeah, that's kind of we don't need to waste time on this?
I don't know, Aaron, have you heard anything? I'm trying to think of anything that is.
Don't want to call it any partners. I'll say, has Matt Rose of Tech Rage IT, because he's in the chat, has he asked for anything really dumb? No.
Yeah, probably so. And Adam gets the brunt of those requests, so I'm sure he'll pop up in chat something really crazy. But...
So, all right. So, yeah, poor Matt. He's probably something I said.
Yeah, or something BJ asked.
Or BJ. Yeah, or BJ. Speaking of phishing, Connor Swalm, CEO of Fin Security, is there in the chat. Bringing it, and he's a fan of Skyline as well. So many wrong things with him. But is Fin going to be one of the 4-a-month integrations?
I'd love to integrate with Fin, but this does bring up an interesting discussion around how you select what you need to integrate with. We'll get on phone calls with MSPs, and they'll have maybe a 15 bullet pointed list of applications that they need us to integrate with. And a lot of times we can whittle that list down to just 5 or 7. And there's 2 main ways to do that. Number one is to say, give us a use case for automation if we integrate with that product. So right sense. Now, we just need the use case. That's the automation use case that'll provide value to both Fin and Rewst clients by creating the integration, number one. And then number 2, and this may not be related to Fin, if your products create tickets today already in your PSA, we may not even need an integration with the product. We can cluck that ticket right out of your PSA and read the title and description or notes of the ticket. And go take an action from it as well. We entered into this weird state in the MSP industry where everyone's clamoring for their products to integrate with their PSA. But what we ended up, the end state of that is everyone bought a whole bunch of tools that gives them a whole bunch of work to do, right? They're opening thousands of tickets.
And I can say that as a vendor, one of the first things, we get on sales calls, do you have any integrations? Do you integrate with this? And while you want to integrate with everything, and I'd have my salespeople come back to me, they're asking for integrations. My question would always be the same. What do they want to do? What do they want to do out of it? Because we can build anything. That's not a big deal. and yes, for anybody, I'm already getting pinged on Discord. Yes, we will talk to Rewst and see if there's any meaningful integrations we can do with OIT VoIP as well. But we get those questions because I think people like the idea of having an API, they like the idea of having integrations, and then when it comes down to, okay, well, what are you going to do with it? But so Dallin brought up one, and I think I'm going to give him an answer he didn't expect. So the question is, can we automate calling? Can we automate checking if internet's down? Automate calling ISPs to see if there's an outage and rebooting the modem if not. I talked to somebody at a conference, and Dallin, you should have been at the conference. I talked to somebody at a conference last week or the week before, I forget when it was. And when an inbound call came in, it did a check against the register, because Dallin's a phone provider, checked against the registered phones. If they were all offline, it would also check the monitoring and then reroute directly to support if it was. So you could automate it, just so you know. But yeah, I mean, and that's the real thing, right? Like, the opportunities are endless here. Where do you see, and I don't want to get too salesy, but do you know what the average savings is, like an MSP that is really engaged in Rewst, that is really automating, because especially onboarding, offboarding, that seems like the base stuff everybody asks for, right? But like the MSP that's truly engaged, leveraging you guys wholly, do you have any idea how much they're saving on a monthly, annual basis, something like that?
On monthly, hundreds of hours. We do have a couple clients that have engaged us well, and are saving over 1,000 hours a month. You triggered me on a key word there, engage, right? Like, we're not going to require you to build all the automations. So you can if you want to. We don't want to lock you out from being able to build your own. But at the same time, if you're not going to build your own automations, you need to engage the ROC and tell them to do it for you. And so the more engaged you are, the more value you will get. And then I don't know. There's a lot I don't know. And here's an interesting thing that we're starting to see. There's time savings that you can get for things that you already have tickets for. And then there's time savings that you get for things that you haven't even started opening tickets for, because you know it would be impossible to service all of the items if they were to open tickets. A good example of this may be Microsoft risky sign-ons, or other things that would generate a ton of noise. I don't know what to call the time savings around closing tickets that should be opened that you're not even opening today.
And that's an important thing, right? Like, that's the MSP, the crux of the MSP's problem. If everything's functioning properly, the client's never calling the MSP, then, oh, I don't need the MSP because the MSP is not doing anything. And that's not the truth. The truth is, that's where VCIO, QBR, all that fun stuff comes in. But the truth of the matter is, this stuff should be happening in the background. I know, our own onboarding, offboarding, our onboarding is miserable between Salesforce and our backend platforms, and and getting the data collection from one place and putting another. And that was one of the kind of cool things I think you guys did, where you're not requiring them to get data collection from a third party. You've built your own, you have forms where you can collect the data necessary for the automations. Can you talk about some of those use cases?
Tim, while you talk about it, can Tim show a form? He's probably not ready to show a form.
Yeah, I think I can show a form. Here we go.
And then before you give some use cases, let me give you some theory too. We didn't launch Rewst to try to compete in the form market. We have enough to deal with on the automation side to then have to add forms on top of that. The issue we ran into was when we were talking to MSPs very early in the conversation, I would say, what form system do you use so we can integrate with it? Come to find out, a large percentage of MSPs didn't have a form system. And so that would have prevented them from being able to trigger an automation via a form. And so we have a form system in the platform. It's just it's a, you know, what you would expect, a drag and drop form system that allows you to take user and data to trigger an automation.
And that's something Adam brings up. And yes, yeah, Adam's a shill because he works for Rewst, but but he brings up, and this is something that hits me personally, right? It's yes, you can build the automations. There's nothing stopping you from taking Node or Python or PowerShell or whatever language of choice and automating whatever the hell you want. But being able to do it, the benefit of these RPA platforms is being able to build them out much more quickly. So it's not just the time saved when they execute, but the time saved also in building it, right? We talked first thing we opened with, is I'll spend 2 hours to automate something that takes 5 minutes to do. And that's the absolute truth. But if I can take an hour or half an hour or get on one of your weekly calls with The Rock and be like, hey, can we do this? Even better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is an interesting thing to look at. And if you look at the history of RPA 7 to 10 years ago, when it really started to hit the enterprise market, almost all of these Fortune 500 companies that were adopting had software development teams. They could create their own products, their own user interfaces, yet they still opted for the speed of RPA. So the same goes in the MSP community. If you want to build your own form system and write your own PowerShell to do this, more power to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I haven't seen any, onboarding, offboarding. I saw Tim from Compliance Risk talking about, automating compliance. I wish we could automate compliance. How cool would that be? If only there was a platform. Maybe we'll discuss that in another partner first with Tim. But time savings. Okay, so you look at this form, you get this form, and what happens here? What goes on here, Tim?
So
why don't you show the workflow behind the form when you talk about it?
So the form looks like a form. One interesting thing about it is we can use our own workflows to generate options for forms. So we're actually going out and querying our demo environment here for a list of people to select as a supervisor in this case. Of course, all the data is fake and it looks weird, but you get the idea. But in the background, we've got basically the form will kick off a workflow when it's done. And user onboarding is it's a very step heavy thing to do. So we have a lot of steps because there are a lot of different ways that different people could be onboarding users. So when we look at a workflow that's large and complicated like this, there are a lot of steps. But the reason there are a lot is because there are a lot of different ways that can be onboarded, and then we have a lot of sub workflows that allow us to reuse the same logic within the workflow. So we update tickets along the way. So we'll reuse that step to update a ticket to show our progress on a user on board.
And I imagine these are logic based as well, right? It's not just do the same thing for everybody, and that's why you have the spider web of stuff, because you're making decisions, taking alternate paths depending on data.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And Tim, why don't you just zoom in a little closer to a busy area, and you can talk about a couple of the steps because we can't read any of the text. But just like an MSP needs to figure out how they scale their services in a cost-effective way across all of their clients, Rewst has to do the same thing with our Robotic Operations Center or our rock stars. I really kind of think of it as like we're an automation MSP for MSPs. And so we built a lot of optimizations in the platform to allow us to deploy the same workflows to multiple clients, and then have the workflow take a different branch on the decision tree based on who the client is. So if this workflow was just running for one company, it would be a lot simpler looking. And one of the differentiators here between other systems would be they would want you to build this yourself and to learn how to build this yourself. We're not looking for you folks to have to learn this. If you're excited by the technology, more power to you, but you don't have to be.
And I actually see some excitement. We have Dallin saying, "I know I'm a nerd, but this looks like the sphere grid from Final Fantasy X." That's pretty awesome, and the equal excitement from Adam, of course. No, and that's so. How often do you see that an MSP will engage the Rock to start building stuff, but they learn and then they kind of just go off on their own, or is it okay that they just become dependent on the Rock, month after month, asking you guys to build stuff?
I think over time, a lot of them, well, so there's a mixture all over the place, but we have a lot of MSPs that engage with us a lot early on, learned a lot, and have gone to build their own automations and doing really cool things with.
So actually, I have a really good question here. I kind of like it. It's so hold on, where I lost my place. So how should MSPs evaluate and determine automation opportunities within their business? Right? You talked about like when they ask for an integration, they say, okay, well, they come with the integration and say it's going to solve these things. That's a candidate for integration. But at the same time, how are they identifying those areas where they should be building out automations?
I think the challenge is only an initial challenge, and we see it's like a maturity thing within the MSP. And the initial way that we point the MSP is to look at their tickets, try to categorize them, and maybe sort the categories by top 10. And then look at those as initial targets for automation. And then the next thing is what likely happens. The MSP gets a mind for what kind of automations can be built. And what we typically see them target next are things that could potentially never have had a ticket in the first place, that ends up saving them a lot of time.
Okay. So with MSPs, we go back to that question I asked in the beginning of like, automation is really important, but I never have time. Just like documentation, just like building processes, it's something you kind of have to build into the culture. If it's not in the culture, it's not going to work, right? Like I can talk about my own company building documentation. That is not just for the technical staff. That is for everybody in the organization. Whatchamacallit. So how do you build that culture within an MSP that wasn't traditionally doing automation?
So we're a young company, and this may be why our best experiences have been with folks that have tried automation before they got to Rewst. Our absolute best customers have been the ones that have gotten their hands into Power Automate and have given it a go. I do feel like if you start with the mindset of categorizing all of your tickets, sort them by descending, target the top 10, that you'll start getting that automation mind.
So that brings
and I'm going to plug.
Go ahead. I'm
something.
sorry. Go ahead.
I don't even know if I'm allowed to plug this yet. I am doing a talk about this on the getting an automation mindset on the MSP Geek conference.
Yes, you can. So I just recorded a promo with Kyle and Mendy this morning. Kyle Spooner and Mendy Green, for those there's nobody here that doesn't know them. MSP Geek. MSP Geek will be holding their first ever conference May 21 through 23 next year in Orlando. All of us here on this call are going to be there. Aaron is going to be giving a talk exactly on that. You want to repeat what that topic is, Aaron?
Ray, were you leading me into that? That was pretty
I kind of was, yeah.
How do MSPs get an automation mindset? Because we've seen so many MSPs during initial demos, like really scratching their head on what can I automate? And then 3 or 4 months later, I go and I review their account, and they've got like 20 automations in there that they've built. and they're having to tell their team to stay out of Rewst and to go do their day job because they're constantly building automations now. And so it's definitely been neat to watch this evolution in the MSP space. I lost audio with you.
Oh, sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Every single time. Damn it. So yeah, we put the link up to MSP Geek Conference. We're not selling tickets yet. They'll be within a couple weeks, but you can go see pricing, go see the hotel information will be up soon. But this brings up another point too of Matt Fox, an MSP based out of New York, said something privately to me. He goes, automation can bring out unexpected visibility. And that's kind of what you're talking about, right, Aaron? When you're seeing, if you're categorizing your tickets, you're seeing your trends, you're seeing where you're spending time. Suddenly, this hey, there he is. There's Matt Fox. So suddenly, you can make those decisions that make you more profitable, more successful, more efficient, more automated, because you're looking at the real data. Have there been any MSPs? I know I'm putting you on the spot here. Have there been any MSPs that like kind of came back and said, I didn't realize this was happening until we started automating it? Maybe Adam's a better person to answer that. But you get what I'm saying? Like there's sometimes where like so we do this regularly in our organization where I'll call out to my staff, to the different departments, say, give me 5 things you wish you didn't have to do over and over again. Right. And that becomes a basis for what we try to automate and what our core services engineering team does. And it's funny enough because like every once in a while we'll do stuff and it doesn't seem like major stuff. It'll be simple automation of creating an account here when something happens over here. It happens often with marketing and CRM and all that fun stuff. And we'll get back, oh, thank you so much. This was such a headache for me. Like this relief that comes over the employee, it makes them happier over something that you didn't realize it was such a tiny automation. It wasn't something you thought was a big deal. Those meaningful effects, I really love it. Have you seen any of those that you can remember off the top of your head, either of you two?
Yeah, a lot of small things like that. Just kind of mentioned before a little bit, just taking a ticket that comes in and putting some extra data into it, to save some time. One thing that we've done a lot of is just when a user opens a ticket, we go ahead and attach all their configurations to it, so that the tech doesn't have to go hunting for those things. So things that a technician does, 10, 20 times a day, it only takes a minute or two, but those minutes add up and they, solving this just improves their job satisfaction.
That's a major thing. It has things that are mundane. People like to do, I don't want to say creative. Not everybody feels they're creative, but people genuinely want to do meaningful things. They want to do things that they think has an impact, has some kind of value to their efforts. And when they know exactly when they're doing mundane things, they know exactly when they're doing meaningless, repetitive things. And so when you can take that off their plate, you're taking maybe an unarticulated stress off their shoulders. They would never have said it out loud, but you're making their lives better.
We had a concept in the cybersecurity space, specifically around threat intelligence, called enrichment. So we would take a bit of security data in, and then we would go automatically to other sources and enrich the data automatically to keep people from having to do that work. And we could potentially be moving the MSP industry towards this enrichment concept as well, where maybe automation isn't 100% closing a ticket, but maybe it's providing all the additional context within the ticket so that the help desk or NOC person doesn't have to go log into all those systems and go look at it. A good example of that is we had one client that had a process for every ticket that was submitted by a customer to go verify those contact details between Active Directory and their PSA. And so what we did to completely eliminate that multi-second process for every single ticket was to just create an AD to PSA contact sync that ran periodically between the systems. Another example of this ticket enrichment concept, I saw someone mention Ashley Clucker said something about
she's the queen of goots. Yeah.
said something about backup automation. The product that they used for backups didn't have an API, but they built a Rewst automation to take a screenshot of the error that was occurring on the backup server and attach the screenshot to the existing PSA ticket so that the analysts didn't have to go log into the system. And they had so many of these every single day that just a couple minutes of savings starts to add up.
Yeah, that backup checking is a very common pain point you hear over and over again.
Yeah, we actually have a couple of people doing some workflows now to get those backup checks. And when you're doing backup checks, and your software puts a ticket in that says a backup failed, but then the next run succeeded, then you get a bunch of tickets for no reason. So we're able to catch the successes after the failures and close those tickets.
Yeah, I look back at my MSP days, and I sorely wish I would have had Rewst. Seriously. So Aaron, there's a question here. Pricing is always a thing, right? They got to ask. So DJ is asking, will there be any information on how this is priced, especially for small MSPs? After perusing the website, I have no idea if it's minimum $10 or 10 million. It's 10 million, DJ. Just go ahead and send that to me. I'll take care of Rewst afterward. But seriously, Aaron, you want to talk on that one?
Definitely. And pardon our website. We're a small startup and we're scrambling to build an automation product, not a marketing website. But we are working on our new marketing website, and it will have pricing on it. But if you want a budgetary number, so you have a roundabout idea, first off, Rewst is a managed service. This is not just a software license. And we start at $1.50 per user under management. So if you have 10 customers with 10 users, that's 100 users under management. And it goes down from there. So it doesn't start at $1.50 and go up. It starts at $1.50 and goes down based on the size of your MSP. Ray, you're muted.
Still muted, Ray.
Every single time, always once or twice. We'll put the contact information up there as well. And don't worry, there's Dustin Bolander, the epitome of truck slammer. Not per me, per Wes Spencer. Just repeating. But that's it for now. Thank you very much, guys. Simon, can you tell us about what we have for upcoming events?
Yeah, so we do have a couple events coming up in the next few weeks, some fun stuff. On Friday at 10 a.m., make sure you check out the MSP Dispatch Week Wrap-Up presented by the MSP Community Network, hosted by Ray Orsini and Tony Francisco. October 25th through the 27th next week, we're going to be at the in-person event, Seven Figure MSP Sales and Marketing Live event in Orlando, Florida. For anyone that's coming out, we have free passes to give away, and I will put the banner. You guys can claim your free passes there. November 7th through November 8th, we're going to be in person again at doing the Tech Bar podcast live at the Cronus Summit here in Miami, Florida. And then November 9th through the 11th, we're also going to be in person at the IT Nation Connect in Orlando, Florida.
Tim, Aaron, thank you so much, gentlemen. I appreciate it. I know we're going to see each other at IT Nation Connect in November. You guys doing any events before that?
I think that's the next one for us, right?
Yeah, IT Nation's next for us.
Cool. Looking forward to it. So if you're going to be in Orlando for Connect, definitely go check these guys out. If you're not, check them out earlier. Go to Rewst.io, correct? yeah, go to Rewst.io, go check out the chicken people, and I believe they offer discounts based on the quality of your puns. So we'll put that out there. But for now, thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Tim. We appreciate you guys. Hopefully, this has been interesting to those of you in the chat and those of you watching. If you have any questions whatsoever, their contact information will be below in the show notes on YouTube, LinkedIn, and everywhere else Simon puts this up. And we'll close this out with a pun. What do you get when you crack a rooster's egg, which should not have an egg? You get a daddy oak. All right, everybody, have an awesome rest of your day.
See ya.